not 85-year-olds.
Why do they need to be vaccinated if there's only like 300 people in England that have died or something? I don't know the numbers, but it's not that many. Unless they've gotten some.
Yeah, the thing is that if you've got it and you go and visit your grandparents who are 95, you're going to do it. So
Yeah, but anyway, with it, if you get
We're having our first, weekly, daily conversation, Ben, about how to run the government. Unfortunately, Boris Johnson has not given me a meeting with him. The truth is, I don't know if I'd go, but would I go? What would I talk to him about?
He's got specific words tomorrow.
What?
No, his hair was messed. His shirt wasn't done up properly. He even messed him up. Absolute mess.
We starting? Right. We're up to Daf Memhei Amud Aleph. 6 lines from the top, 7 lines from the top. V'Rabbanon Nami. The truth is, because we were stopped by the Daf, we're actually in the middle of a topic. We just have to summarize. The Torah says the word Mishras by Nozi. What does the word Mishras by Nozi teach us? 7 lines from the top. What does the word Mishras teach us? No? Very good. Het to the Sa'af according to who? Very good. And according to that, what does Mishras teach us? What does Mishras teach you? What are we doing all night? Mishras teaches you, Ben will tell us. Time kicker, very good. Now, why? That's Shittas Chachamim. Rabbi Akiva learns time kicker from where? Does anybody remember? That's quite common. Nope.
Oh, sorry.
Gulei Nochim, very good. Gulei Nochim. Now, the Chachamim don't learn it from Gulei Nochim. They learn it from the word Mishras. Why don't they learn it from Gulei Nochim? It's a chiddush. It's a chiddush in the sense that it's a noisome time nifgam and afa pikin the Torah says to do agola. Again, the Torah says mishras. So Akiva says it's for het mistaf. The Chachamim says it's the time ke'ikah. The Chachamim don't learn time ke'ikah. The Akiva learns time ke'ikah from Gulei Nochim. The Chachamim say we don't learn time ke'ikah from Gulei Nochim because it's chiddush because it's noisome time nifgam. Says the Gemara. According to you, Rabbi Akiva, that you learned Het Mitzvah there are 2 places. Why didn't we learn Het Mitzvah for Kol HaTorah Kula? Like, just like the Torah says by Noz Het Mitzvah so we should say that by every Is in the Torah. Why not? What are the 2 Ksuvim? Noz and Chatas. For the Gemara, according to Chum as well, Mishras tells you time Ke'ikah, and the Chatas tells you also time Ke'ikah. For the Gemara, Rabbanon Nami, have a Nozi v'Chatos, Shnei Ksuvim Abim Kechot v'Melamdin. Shnei Ksuvim Abim Kechot v'Melamdin will teach us that what? That no longer can you say time Ke'ikah. No longer can you say time Ke'ikah and Kol HaTorah. Why can't you say time Ke'ikah and Kol HaTorah? Because Mishras tells you time Ke'ikah. We lost you, Chaim, already. How can we lose you? Time Ke'ikah, Mishras, is that if you soak grapes in water and you take the grapes out and you drink it, all you get, if you're Nozi, Malchus. Even though you haven't had a single grape. Mishras, so Time Ke'ikah. The taste is like the essence of the thing, right? If you taste something, but the Torah says that by Noz and also by Chatos. Since the Torah says in 2 places, we have a principle that when the Torah says the same halach in 2 separate places, what is the Torah teaching us? That only in those places, we've said this already a million times, that when the Torah teaches the same halacha in the same place twice, in the same halacha in 2 different places, it's telling us only in those places. What's the logic? Because if it is true that you can infer it, then the Torah will not need to tell it to me twice. The Torah only tell it to me once. The very fact that the Torah tells it to me twice is a proof that you cannot infer it. According to the Chachamim, Rabbanon Nami, that Mishras is going to tell you time ke'ikah. And by Chatos, we learn time ke'ikah. So should time ke'ikah be true, let's say, by Cheder, by Bas B'cholam, and things like that? What would you say? Should it be true time ke'ikah by other things?
If it's not
It says twice.
No.
No. So Tam Ki'ikah should only be by Nazi and by Chatos, and we know that Tam Ki'ikah exists everywhere. So it's a kasha. How could you say Tam Ki'ikah exists everywhere? The Torah says in two places. What's the two places? By Nazi and by Chatos. Answers the Gemara that whenever there's a necessity to teach us in those two places, then we don't say This is a very important yesod. It's a logical yesod. Meaning that if I say the same thing twice, now obviously I'm telling you can't infer from one to the other, because otherwise why would I say it twice? But if there's a necessity, meaning from A you couldn't learn B and from B you couldn't learn A. So I'm not telling you don't learn from A generally. Generally you should learn it from A, and generally you should learn from B, but A and B can't learn from each other. The Chachamim say that Tam Ki'ikah exists everywhere. All the Torah says about Nozir and by Chatos. The Torah says because you can't infer from each other. Says the Gemara, Omri Hanoch Hanu Mitzvah Tzrichi, we need both. The Gemara later tells why we need both. Now, the Gemara straight away asks, if you need both, so Rabbi Akiva said, so why don't we say why not? But we just said Hanu Mitzvah Tzrichi. Says the Gemara, Rabbi Akiva might tzrichi. Because if it was only right by Chatos, that would start to say, we wouldn't learn Nozir from Chatos. Why wouldn't we learn Nozir from Chatos? Why not? Why can't you learn that Messiah from Nozir from Chatos? Why? The Chulin Kochim, the Gomino. Chatos is Kochim, Nozir is Chulin. You're not going to learn the halachas of Chulin from Kochim. Kochim is much more chomo.
Why can't you say that Nozir you undo? You can undo that difference.
No, because. Yeah, I mean, you could have said even better. No, that means like this. We wouldn't learn any Issa from Kochim. It means only by Kochim we'd learn it. The Torah should only write it by Nozir. We learn Chatos from it. The colleagues say, we learned everywhere from Nozir. Again, there's a cheshbon that we're going to be finished soon, and then we're going to start easier. So okay, let's try and get this as clear as we can. It's Gishrak. Rabbi Akiva says, Het mitzvah Issa exists by Nozir, and by Chatos alone, nowhere else. Why? What is Nozir and Chatos? The Torah could have written it by Nozir, and then I would know it Kol HaTorah Kula. The fact that the Torah writes it again by Chatos is a right that's only those places, and that's it. Now, what are the Chachamim going to do with that? It's a very powerful argument. The Chachamim said Tam Ki'ikah exists everywhere. How can they say such a thing? The fact that the Torah says Tam Ki'ikah by Nozir, and the Torah says Tam Ki'ikah by Chatos, so she mistakes over Kechot. Answers the Gemara. And here the Gemara changes it. Chatos that the Mitzvah L'Issa, v'chol Mikochim L'Goma, or Mishras that in Tam Ki'ikah, or Mikan Atadon L'chol HaTorah, Kulo, from there you learned Kol HaTorah. Rabbi Akiva tried that Mitzvah L'Issa, vav L'Shteik Over Kechot, v'chol L'Shteik Over Kechot in Melamdin, and this is really the end of this. I want to summarize and explain. The Chachamim will start with the Chacham, Shittas Chacham. The Chachamim say, we can't learn Tam Ki'ikah from Geulei Nochrim. Why not? Rashi starts. Rashi goes to the whole question. We can't learn it from Geulei Nochrim. What does it mean we can't learn from Geulei Nochrim? The Torah says that if you buy a pot from a guy and he used it for his chaza for breakfast, you can't use it for lunch to cook your cholent. Why not? Why not? Why can't you? Because it's got blias. Oh, but it's not reality. It's not an essence. It's not everything. Torah says Tam Ki'ikah. So from there, Rabbi Akiva learned Tam Ki'ikah. Why did Chum not learn Tam Ki'ikah from Geulei Nochrim? What's wrong with learning Tam Ki'ikah from Geulei Nochrim? Because they start nifgam immediately. So it's a chiddush. So therefore, they use the pasuk of Mishras to tell you Tam Ki'ikah. They use the pasuk of Chatos to tell you Hetem Mitzvah L'Issa. Now, is Tam Ki'ikah b'chol HaTorah Kula? I'm afraid to tell you it is. I'm sorry. Why? Because if the Torah says Mishras by Nozir, Kavachim everywhere else, is Hetem Mitzvah L'Issa b'chol HaTorah Kula? No. Why? Because no, not Kashtek Subim. I think what takes it back. Because we learned it by Chatos. Chatos is Kochim. You can't learn from Kochim to everywhere else. So Shittas Chachamim is Tam Ki'ikah is Chol HaTorah Kula. Het Mitzvah L'Issa is only by Chatos, and you can't learn from anywhere else. Is Het Mitzvah L'Issa by Nozir? According to the Chachamim. Anybody want to hazard a guess? Rashi goes through all of this. Het Mitzvah L'Issa by Nozir, according to the Chachamim. You don't be either yes or no, so you've got to choose. No, Het Mitzvah L'Issa by Nozir. No, Ben, Levi, Suli, anybody, Yehuda. What?
No.
What do you say?
Well, we said no yesterday.
The answer is no, but I don't remember
We
talking about
said yesterday, no?
no. Why not? Let's work it out slowly but surely. Heter mitzdarf l'issa, we learned from Chatos. Chatos is Kodshim. Only by Kodshim is heter mitzdarf l'issa. Mashike by Nozi, we don't. What do we use the word mishras by Nozi is tam ke'ikah. That is b'chalater kulu du kavachim from Nozi. Now let's go again. That's Shittas Chacham. Shittas Rabbi Akiva is tam ke'ikah. Where do we learn tam ke'ikah according to Rabbi Akiva? Where do we learn tam ke'ikah? What? I didn't hear, sorry. Goli Nochim. The fact that Torah says you have to get rid of the bliss. Oh, it's a chiddush. It's not a chiddush because he holds it's not this time it's until after 24 hours. And the Torah is about within 24 hours. So he learns time ke'ikah from Goli Nochim. Heter mitzdarf l'issa learns from two more places, from Nozir and also from Chatos. Since it's ein melamdin, so it's nowhere else. According to Rabbi Akiva, would you say heter mitzdarf l'issa by other isum like chelev or chaza? Would you say heter mitzdarf l'issa? No. According to Rabbi Akiva, do you say heter mitzdarf l'issa by Nozir?
Yes.
Why?
That's one of the psukim.
Because that's one of the psukim. Says Rashi at the end of this whole Gemara, which was over a daf long, the whole nafkemina between Rabbi Akiva and the Chacham is one tiny nafkemina. What's the tiny nafkemina? What is it? What's the nafkemina between Rabbi Akiva and the Chacham after all of that? What?
And they say, had to issue the rest of the Torah.
No. Nobody says that Messiah listen to the rest of the Torah. Rabbi Akiva because takes over Ke'echad, and the Chacham because they only learn to buy Chatos, the Chatos is Kodshim. And we don't learn for Kodshim for Kol HaTorah Kula. What's the Machlis Rishon Kiva Kiva Chacham? Shai, what would you say? What's the Machlis? Not. Oh, by Nozir. That is the Machlokas. Do we say Het Messiah Issa by Nozir? According to Rabbi Akiva, yes. According to Chacham, not. Now, we actually have to go through this whole sugya. Says, I have a problem. From this Gemara, do we say Tam Ke'ikah B'chol HaTorah, yes or no? What would you say?
Yes.
Tam, yes. Why? What's the why? Why yes? Why? How do we know it?
Yeah.
According to Rabbi Akiva, because the Torah says it by Nozir. Sorry, the Torah we learned out from Goli Nochim. According to the Chacham, because the Torah says it by Nozir, do kavachim everyone. Says Rashi, if we say Tam Ke'ikah B'chol HaTorah Kula, first of all, I brought Gemara Chulin that says we don't say Tam Ke'ikah. What's that doing? And second of all, if that's the case, it would be going back to our Mishnah Kutach Bavli, would be get Malchus, and we had an Atana we mentioned that you don't get Malchus on Kutach Bavli. Answers Rashi, there was a third way to understand the whole sugya, a third way to understand the psukim. If you hold like the Chacham, that Geulei Nochrim is a chiddush, so you don't learn Tam Ke'ikah from Geulei Nochrim. And if you use the word Mishras to tell you Heter Mitzdarf L'issa, then you have no makoi whatsoever that Tam Ke'ikah. You can't learn from Geulei Nochrim. I can learn from Geulei Nochrim. You can't learn from Mishras. Why not? Therefore, according to this, he says we would have the opinion that there's no such thing as Tam Ke'ikah. Okay. Now, one more small thing, and then we move to new part. The Torah says you're not allowed to eat anything which is made out of grapes, not the peels and not the pips. Limit that is suing nozir from saf and zem zem. If let's say a nozir eats half a gazais of peels and half a gazais of grape pips, would you get malchus? Says the pasuk, yes, because the pasuk says if you eat anything from the grapes, from the peels to the pips, anything he gets malchus, even if it's half a gazais was the peels and half a gazais was grapes. Was the pips. The Gemara, what's the obvious question? Somebody should shout out before the Gemara even says it. What's the obvious question? More than the same thing. No, even stronger than that. According to Rabbi Akiva, that we say Heter Mitzdarf L'issa, that if you eat a couple of pretzels with your grapes, you get malchus. Kavachim, you'll get malchus if you go to eat pips and peels. That is mamish issa and issa. If already Rabbi Akiva holds Heter Mitzdarf, Kuntacham is not a kasha. Because the Chachamim who said before, if you remember about a minute ago, the Chachamim hold that Mitzdarf L'issa by Nozir, yes or no? No. So therefore you have to tell us, nevertheless, by pips and peels, yes. Because it's only by chatos. But pips and peels, yes, you do get malchus. But according to Rabbi Akiva, if I have a couple of pretzels with the grapes, I get malchus. Kavachim, I get malchus. If I have a couple of pips with a couple of peels. How should Rabbi Akiva issa v'etem mitzdarf in issa v'issa v'poya? Omalei issa v'etem v'asachas issa v'issa v'zachas. The chiddush of this pasuk is that with pretzels and grapes, we mentioned a few times, we talk about when you put them into your mouth at the same time. Then we say etem mitzdarf l'issa. Here we're talking about when you're nibbling. So you have a couple of grape peels. Then you have a couple of pips, then you have a grape leaf, then you get malchus, and that's the chiddush. So again, Het issa mitzaref le'issa is even if it's not b'vasachas. Het mitzaref le'issa is only b'vasachas. Do we say het mitzaref le'issa by nozi? Yes or no? Machlekes who and who?
Kiva from the one.
Kiva and Rabbanon. What's the machlekes depend on?
Where you learn from.
Whether we say mishras is come tell you time ke'ikah or het mitzaref le'issa. Okay. New topic. In the older days, they used to use dough to fix their bowls, right? Yeah. Imagine you've got a bowl. This is my bowl. I need my dough. And what happens? It's got a crack inside it. So what do? I stuff it with dough. Now, I'm looking into it. You're not allowed to use this bowl on Pesach. Why can't you use the bowl on Pesach? Because it's got chametz. And if you put your dough inside it for your matzahs, it might get attached to the other dough and you'll be eating chametz. Question is, do I have to burn out the dough? Do I have to burn it out? In fact, sometimes you get like these toasters where it's very hard to get the chametz out, right? Do you have to get the chametz out or not? So the Mishnah over here says, it depends if there's a kazayis in one place or not. We'll see a lot. The Gemara describes everything in the Mishnah in great detail, so just read the Mishnah quickly. Botsik, dough, shebesidke aveva, which is in the cracks of the bowl. Im yesh kazayis m'makom echad chayv levar. V'im lav, if not, bota b'miyute, it doesn't matter. If it's less than a kazayis, so if you've got a kneading bowl, it's got less than a kazayis to fix it for a crack. What do you do when you have a crack in your kneading bowl? What do you use? Nowadays we throw everything in the bin. We saw this in Shabbos. That in Shabbos they used to, even the chicken bones after the Friday night meal, what do you use it over for? Keys. And even the urine they would use over what?
Fertilization.
No, to wash their clothes. So therefore, those days they used to use everything again and again. But nowadays we live in the disposable generation. I've got a grandmother that both throw out plastic the sandwich bags because what a waste. You can use it.
Sometimes they have to go to these old people.
That's it.
All they've got.
I know, but unfortunately, we're not. We live in a generation which we throw out everything. Everything's a base, but it's a very unhealthy thing psychologically, it seems. But the Maisa, if you have a bowl that's got a crack, you put some dough inside it. If it's a kazayis, what's the din? You have to get it out. And you're going to have a bowl with a crack in, and after Pesach, you're going to have to fix it again.
I never said it depends on the ratio between chametz and matzah.
Why? You've got a bowl.
No, because kazayis might be a lot less than the.
No, the bowl is plastic. It's wood. It's not chametz or matzah. The bowl is wood.
No, if you got matzah 60 times more than that kazayis.
What, in the same bowl?
Yeah.
We're not discussing whether you put matzah inside. We're discussing a bowl. You haven't baked anything inside it.
To keep that on Pesach.
Just to keep it on Pesach. That's what I was trying to say. Right? To keep it on Pesach. So if it's a kazayis, what you're going to have to do, you're going to have to get it out. And after Pesach, you're going to have a bowl with a crack inside it. You're going to have to refix it after Pesach. It's a chatzitza. The Gemara describes the last few lines of the Mishnah again and again. So I'm going to leave that Rashi just says Gemara Mefash. Okay. Now the Mishnah tells us if you got a bowl and it's got chametz inside it, what should you do? It depends on one thing and one thing only. What does it depend on? How much? Very good. Very good. Very precise to say how much. Right? Kazayis, not kazayis. The Gemara adds another equation. I mean, if you go to Rav so far with Mishnah, it'll be very easy. You just have to ask you how much, and that's it. The Gemara adds another question. I mean, it's another equation to it. What's the other equation? Is where in the bowl it is. When you have a big bowl, the way you make dough is you pour water and then you pour flour. If you have a tiny crack at the bottom of the bowl, the water will leak and you can't use the bowl. The sides of the bowl, it doesn't matter if there's a crack inside it. Why not? Because by the time you add the flour, it doesn't matter if there's a crack because then you've already got it's a dough won't spill. So the Gemara adds an equation that we'd have when you go to the Rav, he doesn't just ask how much, but what does he ask? Where? Where is the crack? Now there's two ways the Gemara has now, two different understandings. One way is a chumma, one way is a kula. One way is a chumma. That the halacha, that how much, meaning that when it's less exercise, it's okay, is only if it's in an essential place at the bottom of the bowl. But if it's in a high part of the bowl, it's always no good. That's a chum. And the Mishnah just said how much, comes along with the Gemara being machmir and saying, no, it's only good enough if it's a little bit, if it's at the bottom of the bowl. If it's at the top of the bowl, it's no good. Why is it no good? Because then you don't need it so much. And you might come on Pesach in a hungry mode and quickly eat it. So therefore, even if it's less than a kazayis, it's a problem, right? That's one. The other version of the Gemara is it's a kula. That we said a kazayis is no good. A kazayis is only no good if it's at the top of the bowl. But at the bottom of the bowl, it's okay. Because you're never going to take a kazayis out to the bottom of the bowl. Why not going to take kazayis out to the bottom of the bowl? Because by taking the kazayas out, you're ruining the bowl.
Then
So
make
if
it
it's
more
if it's less than the kazayas, it's always good. If it's more than the kazayas, it depends where it is. So again, let's get it very clear, because I'm going to have this again and again until it goes again. The Mishnah, as Chaim said very well, if you ask the Rav, what should I do? I've got chametz in my bowl. One question only, how much? It says, well, no, you're making a mistake. There's a second question, where? In the question of where, we have two versions. One is a kula, one is a chumrah. Where, meaning a chumrah, that when I told you that less than kazayis is okay, it's only good if it's at the bottom of the bowl, but at the top of the bowl, it's no good. Or a kula, when I told you that kazayis is no good, that's only at the top of the bowl. The bottom of the bowl, it's okay. So if you can picture a graph in your mind, it's quite simple. When you have, according to the kula pshat, only if you have a kazayis, and it's at the top of the bowl, it's no good, because plus it's a kazayis, and it's in a place where you don't really need it, then it's a problem. The chumrah one, no. If it's less than the kazayis, and at the bottom of the bowl, it's okay. If it's more than the kazayis, or at the top of the bowl, it's no good. I hope it's clear.
Not make it more kosher though, if it's in a place where you need it.
But when you need it, you're not going to pull it out. It's bottled to the bowl. You're never going to take it out, because if you take that piece of chametz out of the bottom of the bowl, you've lost the entire bowl. You'll never be able to use it again.
Not make it more kosher than you're not going to battle it. You've got chametz in the house.
Yeah, but you don't mind vattel it from the din of chametz. You don't care. You use it as a glue or etc.
You never actually had a problem where the chametz is. It's something like we used to mention about that the wallpaper.
Yes.
And so to make different ways.
Okay, so here we're coming up with a new svara that when you've designated chametz for a usage which is not eating, then it loses the chumrah of chametz. That is the chiddush of our sukkah. Okay, so as I said, you can't use it on Pesach. You can't use the bowl on Pesach. And the wallpaper, we're talking about eating the wallpaper. But you can use chametz as the Mechaber talks about, that in the olden days, some people used to take dough and spread it across the walls to make the walls look nice. Says the Mechaber that if you want to be machmir, it doesn't say you have to, you should scrape your walls before Pesach.
So they're saying that our paper plates on Pesach is
Yes.
no problem for tomorrow, because you never.
No, the problem is only if you're going to eat from the paper bowl, if you're going to eat from it. If you keep 1,000,000 paper plates in the house, you're absolutely fine. Because as the Gemara said over here, you've designated it as a plate, not as a food. The problem is that we eat from the paper plates. That's two separate topics. When you're eating from the paper plate, you're choishish of some of the food. Here the Gemara again, that's how I started off. This Mishnah is not discussing eating from the bowl. Eating from the bowl is forbidden. It's having the bowl in the house. Yeah, is that clear? The paper plates are right. You can have, for example, let's say you've got starch we use for ironing, right? There's no problem with having the starch in the house. The problem is that let's say you iron it on your shirts, then a bit of potato cholent falls on your shirt, Shabbos morning on Pesach, and you take the potato and you eat it. And now your wife ironed your shirt, so there's a bit of starch in your shirt. That's a problem, right? Let's think more inside. This whole halacha that it depends if it's how much. In a place where it's not to make it strong. Where it's made to make it strong, that means to absorb, to keep the liquid in. You never have to destroy it. If it's less than kazayis, if it's less than the kazayis, even if it's the top of the bowl, you don't have to get rid of it. Some learn it on the sefer and it changes the whole version. If it's less than the kazayis, bottom and miyutak. Only if it's going to keep the water in. If it's the top of the bowl, so again, I want to explain that because inside words more is harder to appreciate. The Mishnah says depends how much more kazayis, less than kazayis. The Gemara says it depends where, and the Gemara got two versions in where. Either if it's on the top of the bowl, it is no good, however much it is, but it's kazayis less than the kazayis. Only the bottom of the bowl, the less than kazayis is okay. Or forget that at the bottom of the bowl it's always okay. The top less than the kazayis is always good. Only if it's more than the kazayis and at the top of the bowl it's a problem. And now the Gemara brings two prices that say identically these two versions. Tanya Krishna Kama, Tanya Krishna Basa. Tanya Krishna Kama Botzlik Shvisit Keaviv do at the cracks of a bowl. But Mokim Masu Lechazek, where it's meant to keep the water in. Also the chazek means to keep the water in. Eno Yechoitzes doesn't do chatzitza. Ve'eno Oivan, there's no problem of Oiva, Bali Motza. Umochish also lechazek, Choitzes, Ve'oiva. V'mod V'mom Mekazayis, Havpochis Mekazayis, I feel also the chazek in a chaytzis v'noiv. This Beis says if it's the place where it's not coming to strengthen, you're never over. Then you're not chaytz. Less than the kazayis, you're not chaytzis. Is this version the kuladik or the chumadik? This Beis, the kuladik, because the Beis says very clearly that if it's less than if it's a kazayis, then it depends where it is. If it's to absorb the water, it's fine. If it's not, it's no good. But if it's less than kazayis, it's always good. Now, botanically the basa. But also, top of them here with Beis. It's not a chatzitza. The ain't over. And also the chazek chaytzis over. If it's a kazayis, I put also the chazek chaytzis over. Going to the second price, if you've got a kazayis, it's always no good. Kashna dodi. So what asks is a stira? It's a stira. We've got two prices and they contradict each other. The simple answer would be it's a machlokas. We'll come to it in a second. I just want to go through the two shittas clearly, otherwise it's a shame to continue. We have two prices which are the two versions of Yehuda Mashmor. What are the two versions of Yehuda Mashmor? It's like this. Version number one is the Mishnah says depends how much. Version number one is a kula, meaning that if it is a kazayis, which is no good, that's only if it's at the top of the bowl. But at the bottom of the bowl, it is such a necessity, it's always okay. What would it be by less than a kazayis? It's always okay. The second version is a chumrah. What's the chumrah? That less than the kazayis, a kazayis is always no good. Less than the kazayis, if it's at the bottom of the bowl when you need it, it's okay. Top of the bowl is no good. If you have two vices that argue with each other, you've got no choice. Delete the one which is meikol because of the one which is machmir. Just because you've got a contradiction, are you going to delete one? Are you going to ignore Tanoi? Maybe it's machlikas Tanoi, and he finds it's a machlikas Tanoi. Tanoi, and this talks about what Chaim was talking about. That here we're learning a very big chiddush. Not talking about eating again. I want to emphasize, not about eating. We're talking about keeping chametz in your house. Not talking about eating. We're talking about keeping chametz in your house. Are you allowed to leave chametz in your house? So over here we're discussing a situation where you've got chametz in the house, but you've designated it not as a food, but as an item. So the bicycle is the time. Hapas she'ifsho chayv levayim. Bread that gets moldy, you have to destroy it. You can use it as yeast. As Rashi explains, we mentioned this actually before. The Torah says, "Sa'oi lo imatzu bevotechem." What is sa'oi? Yeah, not sa'oi, but sa'oi. What the Torah talks about, sa'oi. Yeast, bread which has gone moldy, or old, not moldy, old. And what do you use it for? As a starter for your dough. Is it geschmack to eat? No, it's not geschmack to eat. And therefore you see the Torah forbade it. So therefore, if you've got bread which is old bread, you're not allowed to keep it in your house because you can use it. Lechamer. Lechamer over here means the word. What's lechamer mean over here? No, lechamer means to make it chametz. Like we say, chamiro v'chamiro dekabir shusi. Chamir is chametz. So you can make chametz. If you're still planning to use it as an eating. Our kupas soy. If you've got a block of soy, it's a bottle. I remember once went to a very fancy Shavuot, so I forget it. That what they did was they made baskets out of dough, and they made plates out of dough, like a bread basket, and the basket itself was made out of dough. Now, people nibbled at it. Unfortunately, 90% of it went to the bin, 99% of it to the bin, which is again a question of our society. But never mind. It says of Shimon Elazar that if you take a block of dough and you use it from now on as a seat, you're allowed to keep it on Pesach? Yes, you're allowed to keep it in your house on Pesach. So what's the problem having Play-Doh? Only that the children might lick their hands. So what? It's not designated for eating. So it's not designated for eating. No. No, the point is there's no problem. But so we've got machlokas ana kasova kokazais after the mavata loy bottle. So again, we've got machlokas tanoim, a block of dough, which you decide to use it as a chair. Put it on the camera. Do you have to get rid of it?
No. The chair.
So, Tanakama says yes. Tanakama says yes. Rishon LeLozer says not. So says the Gemara, we've actually answered the machlikas of the prices. One price has said that kazayis of dough, which is at the bottom of the bowl, is okay. Why is that okay? Who's it going like? Rishon LeLozer, that you be miyached it as a bowl. The other prices, it's no good. It's going shuttas Tanakama that says it's no good. That's just because the Beis argues on two things: the kazayis at the bottom of the bowl, and less the kazayis at the top of the bowl. Where the Tanakama says that we have machlikas regarding kazayis at the bottom of the bowl, but what about less the kazayis at the top of the bowl? Pochus kazayis be told, since you haven't answered less the kazayis at the top of the bowl. Elahov v'hov Rishon LeLozer v'lo kasha. It's not a kasha. Hov b'makom nisha, hov shelo b'makom nisha. Here, what Abaye does is he makes things slightly more complicated. And he says that if you look at a bowl very carefully, there's actually 3 levels to a bowl. What are the 3 levels to a bowl? Imagine a very big kneading glass. You can picture it. The bottom of the bowl is the most important because if there's even a small crack there, the water will go out. The side of the bowl is also important because when you're making a dough, if there's a big hole in the side of the bowl, it will come out, so you lose parts of your dough. But it's not as important because it's not the liquid won't escape on your side. There's the top of the bowl which nobody cares about. Therefore, says Abaye, now these 2 prices are not arguing with each other. And Rashi goes at great length in order to explain to us how both prices work, and they both agree. They both agree, both prices, that the kazayis at the bottom of the bowl is fine. Why is the kazayis at the bottom of the bowl fine? Because you're not going to take down Pesach. Why? Like Rishon LeLozer, that you're taking bread and making it as a seed. They both agree that the kazayis at the side of the bowl is a problem, and that less than the kazayis at the side of the bowl is not a problem. And they both agree that the top of the bowl, even less than the kazayis, is a problem. So you've got 3 levels. The bottom of the bowl, the kazayis is not a problem. The middle is the kazayis is a problem, and the top of the bowl, even less than the kazayis is a problem. So therefore, he says like this. Let's go through the prices inside. If you want to turn the page, let's go through the 4 or 5 lines at the bottom. Rashi does it a moment base. The first price like this, dough, which is on the side of the bowl, which is made to strengthen, and he means at the bottom of the bowl, then it's not a problem, even if it's a kazayis. But if it's less than the kazayis, then it is not a problem, even by the side of the bowl. It says next price, so again, it's referring to the side of the bowl. And therefore it says it's not a chatzitza. But if it's at the top of the bowl, then it is a chatzitza. So that's what it says. Says the Gemara, Omar Ravashi, according to Abaye, I've already explained this a little bit. But you could have explained Abaye that when he says that it's not important, he's referring to the other side of the bowl, that you've got to crack only on the outer. Says, well, no, that's not pshat. We're talking about even the rim of the bowl, pshita. Obviously, the rim of the bowl is not important. Sometimes the dough rises and it reaches the rim, and therefore people do care. So therefore, like this, the Gemara says the rim of the bowl, even less than the kazayis, is no good. The base of the bowl, even the kazayis, is okay. The middle of the bowl, it depends if it's a kazayis or not.
Can you say that at the end of the day, if the rim wasn't there, the whole bowl was short, and you're going to be able to make less dough. So at the end of the day, it all comes into play.
It seems not. It seems that people don't care having a crack at the top of the bowl. People doesn't disturb them. And when they put dough there, they're thinking to themselves, one day I'll take that dough and I'll eat it. Says the Gemara. That what? If you take dough and make it as a step, it is okay. If you cover the dough with clay, then it's good. And you're allowed to use it. Only if you cover it with clay, otherwise it's no good. Look. Again, it's a machloikis in Ravav. What's the halacha? It's a machloikis what we pass. The Maisa, I just want to tell you the halacha Maisa. We pass them that dough as it is. If you use it and you leave it without covering it with clay, it is no good. And therefore, for example, sometimes people make something out of dough and they leave it as an ornament. It is no good. You have to cover it with something else that should be no good. I remember once there's one of my speakers, I was a god of Drosha, that some people come over with the children, come over with a pasta decorated ornament. They make a picture made out of pasta, and it's no good. You have to get rid of it. You have to put it away for Pesach because it has not got to cover. What?
Because you might eat it.
You might eat it. So you've got to get rid of it.
Is there anywhere where you don't have to get rid of it nowadays?
What do you mean?
Halacha l'maisa, is there anywhere where it's
Oh, if you cover it with
so
clay.
necessary?
You cover it with lime, or you put glue all over it. It's okay.
No, anywhere
Cover
without covering it. No.
What do you mean?
Like in the bottom of the bowl. Is there anywhere where it's so necessary that you won't take it away?
I don't know if nowadays. No, nowadays it's right. Another thing, we pass like the second version over here by a bowl that it's you need to have. We pass in lechumah. The reason we pass in lechumah is because of Avhuna who says Sami Kirtan Kamichamit. Right. Now we're continuing with this bowl. You've got a bowl, it's got 2 cracks, and you put half a kazayas in each crack. And there's a line of dough between the two. We look at it like this. If you pull the string with a bit of dough, you do not need to destroy it. Again, you've got a bowl. This is the bowl, right? It's got 2 cracks. Imagine the cracks. I'm showing it on the outside, but really it's on the inside. One here, one there. But a bit of dough there, it still looks like a bit of dough there. Since each one's less than a kazais, you're fine. But in another situation where you made there's a crack, was big here, and there's a thin hairline crack in between. So you put the dough there, and you make an attachment of dough in between. And there's enough dough here that if you were to pull it, it would become a shiur v'kazais. Then you have to get rid of it. And from here we see, not necessarily if there's a crack. You decided that's how you're fixing it. From here we learn though, that if you've got crumbs scattered around the house, there's no problem. Because over here we're talking about a situation where you can gather the dough in one go and make it into kazayis. But if you've got, for example, a toaster, and there's no way that you can get to kazayis in one grasp, there isn't a piece of bread inside it. Always the toaster that comes inside burnt. Yeah, I'm saying, but let's say you can't. Let's say you haven't. Let's say you haven't. What?
No, it means keeping it there, not selling it if you don't manage to sell it.
If you don't want to sell it, you don't have to because it's not a kazayis.
No, not to make use it. It's not about not using it.
Not using it.
No.
You're not mechuyev to give it to. You're not mechuyev to sell your toaster. All that? We sell them because we're machmir. We don't need to. You don't need to sell them. You actually don't need to sell them.
Even if it's be'en though, the chametz in the toaster.
That's what I said. If it's less than the kazayis, then chayav levaya. Oh, ma'olah leyomna leba veivo, but Beis chayav levaya. Oh, now the Gemara adds that when it's pieces of dough, not crumbs, that's the Rishon say. If it's pieces of dough, then you have to remember. My time is zinging the konishlu, but not dodi. If it's proper pieces of dough, not crumbs, the Rishon say we're not about crumbs, but if you've got proper pieces of dough in separate places in the house, since you could gather them and eat them, so you have to get rid of it. What if someone's upstairs, someone's downstairs, or someone's in the house, someone's in the corridor, it is teku. So that is the halacha. If you've got pieces of bread, if you've got, let's say, half slice of bread downstairs and half slice of bread upstairs, then you do have to go to it. But if you've got crumbs around, you don't have to. What? Nowadays they keep them quite clean. They have crumbs stuck in the underneath in the base, but I can't believe there's a kazais. You can get a kazais there. No, you can't use your camera as well. Keeping it, not selling it. Maybe. Tell you about that. Bread that gets moldy of this one, lechem le'odam, v'akelev yochel oichle, b'tamet tubas oichle b'kabeisa, b'tamet tubas oichle. V'nisrefes im atmeo b'peisach. There's a special halacha that truma, you must be careful not to let it become tummy. If the truma has gone moldy, that a human being can't eat it, only a dog. The halacha is that what's the din? What's the din? You're allowed to burn the truma tahira with truma tameo because it's so moldy that it's not royal achilas odom. It's not considered truma. Yes, very good. It's not metame. That it is tummy until a dog can eat it. As long as a human being can't eat it, it's not tummy. So I have a machlokes of which a human being can't eat, and the dog can't eat it if it's tummy or not. According to Amnosan, it's not tummy. According to Chachamim, it is tummy. Tanu Rabbanon, Avivas who have done. The olden days they would have, I mean even nowadays, you'd have to tan leather. You'd have to work with leather. So what would you do? You would take a big bowl, put chemicals inside it, and put your leather inside it, and add flour inside it. So if you put flour inside it, if the flour has been there less than 3 days, chayav levai. If the flour has been there more than 3 days, once the flour has been with the chemicals for 3 days, then the flour is no longer edible, and therefore you can get rid of it. You haven't put in the skins. Once you put in the leathers, even in 3 days, you don't have to. Even for 1 hour. That means if you put the leather skins inside the flour with the chemical mixture, even an hour before Pesach, you're okay. There's a machlokes is showing what's the svar of Rabba or of Nosen. Some say it's because once you put the skins inside it, it's not edible anymore. And if that's the case, it's simply the same halacha as we said before about bread that got moldy that person can't eat. Others explain, no, you can still eat it. The skins don't make it inedible. But it's like the other halacha is like the halacha of Shimon Loza, that once you take dough and you make it designated for something else, so therefore, and it's not designated for achila, therefore you don't have to worry about it. Now we're coming to again a shtickle cheshbon, but if you keep the cheshbon, it's going to mishkashmak. In our Mishnah, the Mishnah tells us 2 halachas. One halacha is regarding chametz on Pesach, and one halacha is regarding tumah v'tala. Our Mishnah told us that if you've got a bowl and you come running to the Rav, you say, I've got a bowl, it's got chametz inside it, what should I do? What's the halacha? What's the Rav going to say to you? How much? Oh, and also the Gemara adds where it is, but the Mishnah doesn't say that. The Mishnah just says how much. The Mishnah does not say where it is. The Gemara adds that. The Mishnah continues the same thing regarding tumah. Now, regarding tumah, what kind of tumah? Pashas we're talking about. That you want to dip it into a mikveh and tovel it and make it taut. Now it's got dough inside it. So the question should be, if it's got a kazayis as a chatzitza, less kazayis, not a chatzitza. But what does the Mishnah say? Let's read the Mishnah. The Mishnah says like this. If you care about it, that means you don't want the dough to stay there. If you want to leave the dough there, how come if it's part of the bowl, it's not a chatzitza? Very more an obvious question. When you say v'chein, you mean so too. So by chometz, we said it depends if it's a kazayis or not. By tumah v'tah, we said it depends whether you want to take the dough out and you want to fix it in a better oifen, in a better way, or whether you want to leave it in. What's the so too? There's no comparison between the two. When it came to chometz, you said, if it's a kazayis, got to get it out, let's get kazayis, keep it in. When it came to tumah, you said, if it's bothering you, take it out. If it's not bothering you, leave it in, and it's not, how can you say v'chein? Says the Gemara. By chometz, it depends on the measurement. Here it depends on how upset you are. He changes the words of Mishnah. The Mishnah is like this. Regarding chametz on Pesach, it depends on how much. Regarding tumah, it's not like that. Regarding tumah, how is it? It depends solely on whether you want to leave it there. So according to this pshat, if you've got a bowl and you've got dough inside it, you want to tovel it, can you tovel it? Yeah. It depends on whether you want it there or not. If you want to take it out, then you can't tovel it because it's bothering you. Many times when you tovel things, you have to make sure to take off all the sweat. If it bothers you, got to take it off. But if it doesn't bother you, can leave it in. It says v'chein regarding tumah. So what's the problem? The problem is, Ritva says that many times we have chesur and mechsa, many times we change a Mishnah. But to change a Mishnah from a yes to a no is too far-fetched, because that's something that Yehuda Nasi would have been careful about, because other things he would have expected you to work it out yourself. And you could have worked out what he meant by speaking in a very short language. You would have worked out what he meant by thinking about it. But from no to yes or yes to no, that you never do. So Abaye says to Rabbi Yehuda, I don't like what you have to say. Why not? Because the Mishnah says Pesach and so too Tumah, and you're saying and not so Tumah. That doesn't make any sense. I just want to put out governance of pleasures. The Yavitz writes the words Omale Abaya is incorrect. Abaya could not have spoken to Rabbi Yehuda because Abaya was only a little child and Rabbi Yehuda was nifta. We shouldn't give out these things. I gave this out once. I made a chart. If you look in the charts, I've got pleasure to see my chart, which I spent a lot of time on. If you look at the generations, if you look, which generation is Abaya? Abaya was with Rav and Menachem of Yitzchak, and Rabbi Yehuda was 2 generations earlier. Look over here, my chart. None of you are keeping it on you. I work so hard making a chart. Well, that's not helping you. If you look, Rabbi Yehuda's generation was in the year 260 to 290, and Abaya was only 330 to 360. Did you get one? You got one, no? Again, and then the people just came recently. Wait for your version, Moshe. So it doesn't. So he changed the gears not to Omale Abaya, but Omar Abaya. Abaya said, "Okay, El Omar Abaya Achikoma v'chein linen surf tumah b'Pesach." Meaning like this. The halacha is that for something to spread tumah, that means let's say you've got a crumb and it was in a tummy person's house. Can it spread tumah? No. How big does it have to be? The size of a kizbeitza, bigger than a kizbeitza. Size is half kizbeitza. That's the size of an egg. Twice as good size. Very good. Now, what happens is like this. If you've got a bowl of fruit, and it's not a kibbeitza, it's not the size of a kibbeitza, and it becomes tummy, and now it wants to spread tumah, can you include the dough which you put inside the bowl to fix it with the fruit to say that it should spread tumah? Imagine, take a bowl like this, and it's got cracks, you put dough inside it, you fill it up with a few grapes, it's not the size of an egg, bring it to the house of a dead person, so it becomes tummy. And now you want to know, do you get tummy by touching it? What would you say? When you touch the fruit, are you touching a kibbeitza because you're including the dough or not? Oh. So it depends whether you want the dough there or not. If you want to take the dough out, so the dough is not part of the bowl, your intention is to remove it the next day or two, so the dough is part of the fruit, so it's mitzvah, and it will spread tumah. But if you want the dough to stay there, it's not mitzvah. Says the Gemara on Pesach, because we learned a special halacha, the akazayis of chametz on Pesach you have to get rid of, whether you want to leave it there because you like the way you fixed it, or whether you don't like it, we know that you're going to have to get rid of it because of chametz on Pesach. So if we look at it, whether you like it or not, as if it's separate from the bowl, and then whether you like it or not, it's part of the fruit and it is mitzvah. That's what the Mishnah means, the chenin and tumah. Again, on Pesach, it depends on how much. K'zayis less than a k'zayis. With tumah, it depends on the kibbeitza. A kibbeitza has to be a kibbeitza of fruit. What happens if there's a bit of dough in the thing? So during the rest of the year, what would it depend on? So during the rest of the year, what will it depend on? What? If you want the dough to stay in the bowl or not. On Pesach, regardless of what you want, if it's a k'zayis, it will be mitzvah to the fruit. Why will it be mitzvah to the fruit? Because we know that you're going to get it out. Let's say inside. There's less in the kibbeitza of fruit. But no go by botzig to touch that dough. But Pesach is so choshuv on Pesach where it's choshuv because of the issa mitzvah. The shaymo is hashonad v'kpedet alim milsa im makbidol mitzvah im moitze b'kiyumo yahavika veiva. So the Mishnah says like this: on Pesach, when you've got chametz in your bowl, it depends on the kazayis or less than kazayis. The rest of the year, if you want to know if you've got a kibbeitza of fruit, it depends whether it's your makbid or not, and whether you're makbid or not. If it's a kazayis of chametz, you have to get rid of it because it's going to be the chametz of Pesach, and therefore it's mitzvah. It's a shame we're going to stop again in the middle of the topic, but Mr. Hashem will continue tomorrow. Memvav Mudalef 7 lines from the top master from Rava, discussing that connection between the chametz and tumah. That
change